Hello everyone and welcome back once again to another biology class of Fun Scholar. And today our chapter of discussion will be organization in living things. So this is the chapter which has been included in the 7th standard of ICSE board. So we'll see how living organisms show the hierarchy of organization in the multicellular body structure, and we'll also know the importance as well the functioning of each level of hierarchy. So let's begin. So first of all, we'll have a quick recapitulation about the characteristics of living organisms, which we have already discussed in the lower grades, right? So basically from the lower grades, we know the basic distinction between living and non-living organisms. And in this, we are just having a recapitulation of what are the main features or distinctive features to ascertain that whether any organism is living or non-living. So first characteristic is movement, right? So we know that living organisms move. They show movement. They can either move from one place to another, as in case of locomotion that we have seen, that is movement from one place to another in search of food, shelter or protection from the prey animals. Okay, and also in case of plants who are stationary and cannot show locomotion, that is movement from one place to another, they show movement in many different other ways. For example, in case of plants, they show response to stimuli. Example, the shoot system of plants grow towards light and the root system grows away from the light towards the soil. And also some plants like touch me not, they close their leaves if you touch them. And also there again are the examples of insectivorous plants, which also close their leaves once the insects are trapped within them. So therefore these are the movements shown by plants even if they are stationary at one location. But if we keep aside all these movements, that is movement either from one place to another or being stationary in one place but showing movement in different other ways, just like plants. But the first movement which actually ascertains whether any cell is living or non-living is the movement of the protoplasm. The movement of the protoplasm. So what is protoplasm? It is the sum total of cytoplasm, the gel or the matrix within the cell, and the nucleoplasm. That means the jelly-like substance or the matrix within the nucleus. So if we take them together, so then we say protoplasm. So the movement of the protoplasm ascertains whether any cell is either living or non-living. So if there is movement of the protoplasm, the cell is living. If there is no movement or the protoplast is absent in all total, then it is a non-living cell. The next characteristic is respiration. We all know that both plants, animals and all the living organisms, they respire, and during respiration, what is the basic procedure? They take in oxygen and they give out carbon dioxide as a breathing. And also apart from breathing, what do? They utilize the inhaled oxygen to break down the nutrients that they have taken in during the food intake. Whatever may be their food, either it can be the plant products or it can be animal products or both or anything. So they break down the nutrients in order to obtain energy from that, and in this breaking down process they use the inhaled oxygen. Next is sensitivity to stimuli or response to stimuli. That I have already told you, this is best exhibited by the plants, which I have already told you, and also by the animals we also respond to stimuli such as the touch, then the temperature, then other types of stimuli, then light. So these are the various types of stimuli which actually helps us to ascertain whether any organism is living or non-living. So, and then comes the growth. Now, growth, I will say, not only in terms of physical growth but also in terms of aging, which is also known as senescence. Right, this is also known as senescence. That means the period of aging. So the living organisms, they both grow physically and they also age with time. But in case of non-living things, we do not see such feature. And then reproduction. What is reproduction? Reproduction is the production of offsprings or the progenies from the existing living organisms. And what is its importance? Its importance is to maintain the continuity of a certain species on earth, and as well as to maintain the continuity of the food system in the ecosystem of the food system as a whole. Because if certain species get extinct, then we know that the other type of organism which depend on that species for their food intake will also get extinct. Then comes the excretion. We know that just like food intake or the process of ingestion or excretion of the toxic substances from the body is also very vital for the body to remain toxin free and also function properly. Then comes the nutrition. That means the taking of various type of nutrients through which the body can get the nourishment and also is able to grow and develop. And last but not the least is the cellular structure. As I told you, what do we understand by cellular structure? Means either the living organism will be unicellular or multicellular, and if it is multicellular, the level of organization in the cellular structure and also the cellular organelles that are involved within a single cell, that will also be counted in this feature. So these were the features or characteristics to actually ascertain whether organisms are living or non-living, and the characteristics of living organisms we have discussed. Now let's go further and see what is the organization speak about. Now, organization. What do you mean by organization? Organization, by the term we know, it means a proper arrangement. So, when we see a proper arrangement is there, then we see that there is a organization. There is an organization, or there is a definite, we can say, a pattern, right? A definite pattern is followed. So organization refers to the arrangement of living things in a systematic and hierarchical manner from simple to complex level, right? So therefore it means how different parts of a living organism are structured and function together efficiently. So for the starting with the basic level, what is the fundamental unit of life? Yes, definitely, it is a single cell. Then when cells of similar kind, they combine together and they perform the same type of function, then they form a single tissue. Now, again, when tissues of similar structure and function, they aggregate together, they form organ. And many organs together form organ system. Right. Now, I am writing it here due to lack of space. Now, organ systems, just like in the human body, we have many organ systems such as the skeletal system, the digestive system, the nervous system, the endocrine system, excretory system, reproduction system, so respiratory system. So like this, all the organ systems together make up an organism. Right? We have studied up to this much only. But in this chapter, we will know beyond this also. What is the level beyond this, that, or beyond organism level? So, beyond organism level, we have got that when many organisms of same type, means of same species, they actually live together in an area, is known as the population. Right? So, it started with a single cell, now it has gone to the level of population. And now, what after population? So, many populations interacting with each other, they form a community. Then, many communities interacting with each other in an area forms an ecosystem. And finally, all the ecosystems together forms the biosphere. What is biosphere? Biosphere is called the realm in which we find life. Right? So, how many types of realms we have on Earth? We have basically 4 types of realms. The hydrosphere, which contains water, lithosphere, which contains land, atmosphere, which contains air, and when these 3 types of spheres, they combine together, they give rise to biosphere. That means the realm where we get the life. So therefore, this is the level of organization. I am repeating myself: cells form tissues, that form organs, then organ system, then organ systems for organism, then organisms of same species form population, then populations, many different types of populations living in an area is called a community, and then communities together form an ecosystem, and ecosystems, all the ecosystems finally combine to form the biosphere. Okay? So see, these are the levels which we have seen. Cells, then tissues, then organs, then organ system, the organism, population, community, ecosystem, and biosphere. Right? Now, levels of organization. So, therefore, how many levels of organization we can know? So, firstly, you can see organism level. So, organism level means the level of the organism, individual level. That means we are trying to learn about that individual only. That means about that organism, that individual, the characteristics and all the, you can say, the pattern shown and everything followed in that particular organism, right? So now second type or second level of organization is organization lower to level of organism, right? So therefore below the level of organism we have whatever the hierarchical orders we have for the organization, that will be included. Means below the organism level, which are the orders which are included? See, below organisms level, organ system, organs, tissues and cells, right? So below organism level we have got these orders or these hierarchical levels. Then organization higher to level of organism. So therefore above and beyond the organism level, the levels which are found are known as organization higher to level of organism. What are they? You can see the population, community, ecosystem and biosphere. So 4 below the organism level and 4 above the organism level, right? So this is how we can study and make the grouping so that it becomes easy for us to understand different hierarchical orders. Now, we will discuss each level one by one briefly. So, living organisms are structured in an organized way that helps them carry out various life processes efficiently. The levels of biological organization go from the simplest to the most complex level. Definitely, as we go above from the cell level to the level of the biosphere, the complexity and the features, they actually become more and more complicated, and that is why we have to study from the first level. In order to, if there is some issue in any level, we have to go to the level beyond that, below that level, so that we can know that what is the problem from the root level, and that is why the level above it is unable to function properly. So starting from the lower level, lowermost level, that is the cell. So cell, we already know, it is the structural and functional unit of life, such as the muscle cell, nerve cell. So different types of cells are present in our body. Now, the next level is tissue. When cells of similar function and similar structure, they aggregate together, they form a tissue. So tissues are a group of similar cells working together to perform a specific function. That means muscle cells will aggregate together to form muscle tissue, and then nerve cell will aggregate together to form a nervous tissue, and then we know the cells of the permanent type of tissue in plant, that is the xylem and phloem. They are the complex permanent tissues. So they are made up of different types of cells. Then also there are simple tissues, permanent tissues, sclerenchyma, collenchyma, parenchyma. So these are the different types of tissues in case of plants. Then organ. What is organ? It is made up of different tissues. When all the tissues, for example, all the muscular tissues, they come together to form either a skeletal muscle or a smooth muscle or a cardiac muscle, right? For example, heart, lungs, leaves in plants, they are the organs. So for animals or human beings, and also for the plants. So leaves, stem, roots, they act as the parts or the organs of the plants. Now, coming to the organ system. So, a group of organs that work in sync with each other, we can say that one organ will function to perform one function, to perform that one work, right? And then another organ will also take that work forward. So, they should function simultaneously, that one after another, right? The arrangement or there should be the synchronization in their working. Then only an entire organ system can work properly. So, and then all the organ systems, when they come in an organized manner, they aggregate, so they form an entire organism. So that is a complete living being made up of various organ systems. Now, the next comes the ecosystem. Directly, we know that population and community we have already studied. Come to the ecosystem. So, an ecosystem is what is that? It is a natural unit where living organisms such as plants, animals and microorganisms, they interact with each other and also with other non-living environmental factors such as air, water, soil, sunlight, right? So this we need to understand. For example, there are many examples such as pond ecosystem, forest ecosystem, grassland, desert ecosystem. We can take any example, right? For example, we can take the grassland ecosystem. Let's understand that. Now, we already know that living organisms are known as biotic factor and non-living organisms are known as abiotic factors. Now let's see how in a grassland ecosystem both the types of factors interact with each other, right? So therefore, what do we find in a grassland ecosystem? Primarily the autotrophs, which are the grasses, right? They are found, and also the other types of animals such as the insects, then frogs, then lizards, right? Then we can have zebra, we can have giraffe, right? We can have a lion. So these are all the animals we can find in a grassland ecosystem. And what will be these are all the parts of the abiotic factor, biotic factors, right? But what are the abiotic factors existing there? The same abiotic factors existing in every ecosystem. That means air, water, soil, sunlight, because these are available everywhere, right? So we can say, now tell me, how are they both dependent on each other, right? So let's see. So firstly, if I see how are they dependent on each other, that means first they will form a food chain. It will start with the autotrophs, grass. Grass will be taken by insects. Insects will be taken by either frog or lizards. So then these frogs will be eaten by the lions, or like this, right? So therefore then the grass can be eaten directly by the giraffe and the zebra, right? So a food wave will form. So the biotic factors are interacting within each other. Now let's see how they interact with the abiotic factors. We know that since grass is also an autotroph, it will need air, water, soil, sunlight, everything. Why? To obviously to carry out the process of photosynthesis and prepare food. And in this way, it will give out the oxygen, which will be utilized by all the other heterotrophs, right? All the consumers are heterotrophs. And what will the grass get in turn? When the animals or the insects, or any one of them or all of them will die, so they will be decomposed, their bodies will be decomposed, and the nutrients will return back to the soil, and the soil will be replenished with nutrients, and the grass will take the nutrients from that soil. So in this way a cycle will go on. Okay, so in this manner they are dependent on each other as well as on the abiotic factors also, right? Now we can say how the abiotic factors are dependent on this living factors. Same way, the air that is getting replenished with oxygen. How? Because the autotroph is giving out oxygen as the byproduct of photosynthesis. Then the soil is getting replenished with the nutrients. How? Because the dead matter of the living organisms, they are getting mixed with the soil, right? And that is how the soil porosity and the water holding capacity of the soil is getting enhanced. So this was an example of how in an ecosystem both the biotic and the abiotic factors interact with each other and are dependent on each other. Now moving ahead with the biosphere. As I told you, biosphere is the global sum of all the ecosystem. Global means on this earth. So it is the sum total of all the ecosystems existing on this earth. And it is the zone of life. As I told you, the realm on which life is found. So it contains all the types of the other realms, lithosphere, hydrosphere, atmosphere, because without their interaction, so life is not possible on this earth. And this biosphere to exist, we need the lowest level, right? So this is the highest level. So for the biosphere to exist, we need the lowest level, that is the cell, to function and exist. right? So now, there are some principles of biological organization. Biological organization means we know how the organization we have seen just now. That is first starting from the cell and then going up till biosphere. So there are certain rules or principles of this biological organization. Let's try to understand them one by one. First is the hierarchy of organization. That means living organisms are organized in a hierarchical manner, as I told you, from the most simple to the most complex level. Cell is the most simple level and biosphere is the most complex level. Then second principle is that cell is the basic unit of life. I have told just now that for the biosphere to exist and function properly, it is very necessary that the lowest level, the cell, should exist and function properly, because otherwise the entire hierarchical order, which is based on a single cell, that will not function properly or not be formed at all if that cell is not existing or functioning properly. Then is the division of labor. This is very important, and also the reason why hierarchy is necessary. That means, what is division of labor? That means each level will have a specific role to perform. Now, what will be the advantage of this organization of this principle? That means no load will be given to a particular level, that overloading will not be there, and if overloading can be prevented, so each level can perform efficiently, right? And it will also ensure the efficiency, as I told you, right? So each level will be focused on maintaining and performing a single type of task only, and when all the tasks which are performed by different levels, they come together, the higher level as a whole will be able to perform and function efficiently. Then coordination and control. I also told you that when you go up to the higher levels, from the individual level to the higher levels, then what happens? There should be a synchronization. All the functions should be carried out in a synchronized manner, or in other words, in a coordinated manner. For example, the muscles and nerves work together to allow movement. Right? A simple example is that whenever we touch anything hot or anything which is very sharp, what is the reflex action to that? That we remove our hand. Right? How does this happen? That the sensory neuron carries the stimulus to the spinal cord, right? Then the spinal cord sends and receives that, and then decides the action to it, and then sends the instruction via the motor nerve, and then and this happens in fraction of second. That is why we are unable to understand. But then when the motor nerve reaches to the fingertip, we are able to remove our hand. Now tell me, what will happen if it doesn't happen in this coordinated manner? So before the sensory nerve is able to perceive anything, or the sensory or the spinal cord is able to process that information, a different type of instruction has gone via the motor nerve to the fingertip, and it has gone and pierced itself on the sharp object, or it has stayed longer on the hot object, so we'll hurt ourselves, right? So a coordination is must whenever a big task needs to be accomplished. So that is the control and coordination. Our brain, spinal cord, they are the centers which actually control and coordinate all the activities in our body, right? With the help of the neural impulses and also through the hormones. Then we have interdependence. This I have already explained in the ecosystem also. So it can be explained in another way, that as I told you, if a cell is damaged, then the tissue will not be able to function properly. For the tissue to function properly, all the cells that actually make up the tissue need to function properly at their individual level. Similarly, if the tissues don't function properly, the organ as a whole will not function properly. So, the role of each individual or each constituent in this hierarchical order is very, very important. And last but not the least, adaptation and specialization. What does this mean? Each organ or cell type is specialized for a particular function, helping the organism survive in its environment. Right? So therefore, the function, this principle is related to division of labor. So we know that each cell type and each organ has a specific function. For example, lungs will take in the oxygen and give out the carbon dioxide, and then in the lungs the oxygen will be then getting assimilated in the bloodstream, right? So again, what will the heart do? The heart will pump the oxygenated blood to all the parts of the body and collect the deoxygenated blood. So all the functions have been, and all the organs are specialized to perform some specialized functions. Now, what will happen if there is some change in the environment? For example, we go to the plain region to the mountainous region. What are the changes that the body will actually show in order to acclimatize? The body will show that first of all, the breathing rate can enhance so that more and more oxygen can be supplied, because in the high altitudes you have lack of oxygen in the atmosphere. The oxygen pressure, the partial pressure of oxygen in the higher altitudes, it is low as compared to the plain regions. So therefore, our breathing system or the capacity of the lungs needs to enhance. Similarly, the cardiac output of the heart, that also needs to increase. How? Because it will increase the pulse rate. So therefore, since they are doing a specific function, so they can modify that according to the changes in the environment and accordingly help that organism to adapt and acclimatize to the changing environment. What would have happened if the lung had to do all the functions altogether? Then it would have created a mishap, because it would have at the same time delivered the oxygen rich blood quickly and also then absorb or increase the breathing rate in order to absorb more and more oxygen. So therefore, multitasking would have then created a burden on them. But since it is not the case, they can do their work efficiently and the organism can easily adapt to the changing environment. Now, coming to tissues, which is the main topic of discussion of this chapter. Now, what are tissues? We have already known that tissue is a group of similar cells that work together to perform a specific function of the body. And what is the another condition of the cells that form a tissue? Those cells should have a common origin. This is very important, right? And organized. As I told you, they need to be in sync with one another, which will allow them to carry out their task efficiently, right? So therefore, what are the specific tasks you can relate here? Muscle tissue helps in the movement of body parts. Nervous tissue carries messages between different parts of the body. Epithelial tissue covers the surface of the body and internal organs. Connective tissue connects the different parts of the body. And xylem and phloem, they are also the connective tissues and they help in the transportation of water, food and minerals in the plant body. So these are the specific type of tissues which are specialized in their specific functions. Now we'll watch a video regarding tissues. So what are tissues? How are they formed? We'll get to know more in detail in this video. So let's watch it.
What? Unit of life? Or in other words, what is the building block of an organism's body? The cell, that's absolutely right. Cells make up the bodies of all living organisms. How many cells do you think an organism needs to live? One, two, hundreds? Well, that depends on the organism we're talking about. An organism like amoeba is made up of only a single cell. Yes, you got it right. Just one single cell constitutes the body of an amoeba. This cell carries out all the functions of this organism's body, be it respiration, digestion, do they have a single cell? Yes, they don't. They have many cells which make up their entire body. There are groups of cells which carry out different functions. For example, all cells of type A will carry out the function of respiration, and cells of type B will carry out the process of digestion. But what are these groups of cells called? Do they have a specific name? Yes, each cluster of cells is called a tissue, and each tissue carries out a specific function. Such organisms with many tissues are called multicellular organisms. Multicellular organisms have tissues in their bodies which are placed at specific places to carry out specific functions. This is called division of labor in the organism's body. Can you give me a few examples of tissues in the human body? The muscles? Yes, the muscles are tissues that help movement by contraction and relaxation. What about blood? Do you know that blood is a tissue? Yes, blood helps transport nutrients, hormones, and waste materials as well. Blood is the connective tissue of the human body. Let us look at plants now. Do you think plants have tissues too? Are the tissues of plants and animals similar? Do you think plants need the same tissues as humans? Logically, they do not have the same tissues as humans do, but they do have tissues. Let us see what the considerable differences between the two are. Do plants move from one place to another like humans do? No, right? Plants are stationary and their movement is restricted. So a closer look at a plant tissue will make you realize that most of them have dead tissues. Yes, dead tissues. And why do you think plants need dead tissues? The answer is quite simple. Plants only need mechanical support. Hence, they do not need living tissues. Dead tissues serve the purpose of giving support to plants and they need very little maintenance. What about animals? Do animals move? Yes, animals move from place to place and they need tissues for purposes more than just physical. Almost all tissues in animals are living tissues. These tissues need nutrition which they get from the organism's body. What else could be a possible difference between the two? Do you know that there are two types of tissues in plants? One type of tissue divides throughout its lifetime, while the other type of tissue does not have the ability to divide. What is the purpose of such a differentiation? Well, plants do not grow uniformly throughout their body. Their growth is restricted to some specific parts. In these parts, we find the tissues which can divide. On the other hand, there are plants which do not grow beyond a specific limit. They have some non-dividing tissues. Can this apply to the human or the animal body? Of course not. Humans and animals exhibit uniform growth throughout their body. Therefore, animals have tissues that divide spread throughout their body parts. They do not have these two types of tissues. In our further videos, we shall look at what these tissues are called as well as the characteristics of each type of tissue.
So, here you can get a clear distinction between plant tissue and animal tissue. So, I am revising once more that plant tissues in most of the cases they are dead tissues. Why? Because since plants are non-motile, they do not locomote from one place to another. So, they do not require so much energy. Rather, they require the support and the mechanical support, and also if the tissues are dead, low maintenance can be done with them, right? But in case of animals, since they locomote from one place to another, so all their tissues are living, and also they do not only provide the support, but they also perform different functions. And there are two types of tissues. You can see dividing tissues in case of the areas of the plants which grow particularly, which are known as meristematic tissues, which we will now study further, and the non-dividing ones are known as permanent tissues. But in case of animals, no such division is there, because animals show uniform growth. So all the tissues will grow uniformly. It's not that a particular region is growing and the other region is not growing, right? So that is the thing, the main distinction between the plant tissue and animal tissue. So under plant tissue, we are going to next study about meristematic and permanent tissue, and under animal tissues, we are going to study about epithelial, connective, muscular and nervous tissue. Now we'll see what meristematic tissue in plant is all about. So for the introduction, let me tell you, these type of tissues, they have the capability to divide throughout their lifetime, right? So, and they are known as dividing tissues. They are known as dividing tissues. So they divide, that means the cells of this tissue divide, and then it actually leads to the proliferation, that either in increase in height or increase in the girth. So, and it leads to the growth of particular regions of a plant body. So let's watch in the video how this type of tissues help in this function.
In all, we studied that plants have two types of tissues. Can you name them for me? What are they called? Dividing tissues and non-dividing tissues, right? Absolutely correct. Now let us look at the technical terms for these tissues. In this lesson, we will look at the former type of tissues. The dividing tissues in plants are known as the meristematic tissues. Where does the word meristematic come from? It comes from the Greek word meristos, meaning divided. Well, the main function of this tissue is to divide and help the plant grow. So where do you think you will find this tissue? Exactly. They are at all the places where the plant's parts show growth. And as we just studied, all the parts of the plant do not show growth. Growth is restricted to only certain parts of the plants. What's interesting is that meristematic tissues is named differently based on the part where it is found. And do you know how many such parts of plants have meristematic tissues? 3 different parts. That's correct. 3 different parts have meristematic tissues. The meristematic tissues in each of these parts has different names. Let us look at the 3 main types of meristematic tissues. The first is the apical meristem, the second is the lateral meristem, and the third is the intercalary meristem. Do not be let down by these difficult names. Let me make them easy for you to understand. Apical meristem tissues are found in the growing tips of the stems and the roots. This tissue divides and helps increase the length of the plant. What about the second one, lateral meristem? Do you know where it is found in the plant body? The word lateral means side to side, and this means the girth of the plant. The lateral meristematic tissue divides and increases the girth of the plant. Apical increases the length and lateral increases the girth. This girth of the plant is also known as the cambium of the plant. What about the last tissue type, intercalary? Where is this tissue found? This tissue is found at the base of the leaves or the internodes. These spaces here are known as the nodes. What do you think this tissue will do? They will facilitate the growth of the twigs into branches. As these tissues are very active, the cells in these tissues are filled with cytoplasm. They require a lot of energy and nutrition to carry out the various functions of the tissues. But do you know something interesting? At the initial stages, these tissues are not differentiated into any specific types. Once they divide and mature after completing the growth of the plant, the characteristics change. Then they are differentiated into components of a single tissue. Division of labor takes place only after maturity. Until then, all the meristematic tissues exhibit the same function of simple growth of the plant. If these are the characteristics of the dividing tissues, what about the non-dividing tissues? Let us study them in our next lesson.
So as stated in the video, you have seen the meristematic tissues are of three types. The apical means apex is the tips. So there are two tips, the shoot tip and the root tip, and it helps in lengthening or in increasing the height of the plant. Then we have got the lateral meristem, that means it helps to increase the girth side to side, that means it increases the width of the cambium, right? And finally the intercalary is there, which is present intercalary. It is present in the internode region. That is why the name is intercalary. It is present at the internode region. And what is its function? Its function is the proliferation of the small twigs into the branches of the mature plant body, right? And it is actually sandwiched. This type of meristematic tissue is sandwiched between two permanent tissues, one above and below. So therefore, if you see a plant body, so at the base of this node, the intercalary meristematic tissue will lie, and above it will be the permanent tissue, and below it also will be the permanent tissue. So it is sandwiched between two permanent tissues. This is what is necessary to know about intercalary meristematic tissue. Now, meristematic tissue, when actually gets mature enough, they differentiate to form permanent tissues. So meristematic tissues, they can divide, but the permanent tissues consisting of cells which cannot divide further. They are responsible for growth because cell division can take place, and if cell division takes place, there will be growth, physical growth. But what will happen here? They do not grow, but they help to perform specific functions. Just like xylem helps to transport water and minerals, phloem helps to transport food. So in same manner, they do not help the plant body to grow in height or in increasing girth, but they help to sustain the life, the plant life, by performing specific functions. So the process by which meristematic tissue gets converted to permanent tissue at maturity is known as differentiation. Differentiation. That means the process through which meristematic tissue gets converted to permanent tissue, right? That's the differentiates. Now another thing I need to tell you, that if what will happen, the opposite thing occurs. Does it happen? What do you think? Yes, it does happen. Okay, so therefore the opposite thing means permanent tissues sometimes they actually can be converted back to the meristematic tissue and they can gain the ability to divide, right? So therefore it is known as de-differentiation. D, that means the opposite of differentiation. De-differentiation, right? And after performing, when there is the need to divide, right? So and then after performing that cell division function, they can be again differentiated into the permanent tissue. Then when the for the second time, here I will write second time, they get differentiated into permanent tissues, it is known as redifferentiation. Redifferentiation. So once I will revise for all of you that firstly, when for the first time, let me write it, first time, the meristematic tissue gets converted into permanent tissue, it is known as differentiation. Then if for some reason the permanent tissue gets converted back to meristematic tissue and regains back its capability to divide, it is known as de-differentiation. And then after performing that function of cell division for a specific purpose, then it gets converted back to the permanent tissue for the second time, then it is known as redifferentiation. So differentiation, de-differentiation and redifferentiation, right? These are the three processes of conversion. Now, the next type of tissue that we will learn about is the epidermal tissue, which is also known as the surface tissue, since it actually forms the outer covering of the plant body. So, let's watch this video.
In the previous video, we glanced at the simple permanent tissues. And now, before moving ahead with the complex type, we need to stop at the concept of epidermis, the single layer of cells covering almost the entire plant body. We humans need a layer of skin to protect our internal visceral organs and systems, right? Plants are not an exception to this. They also require and possess a protective covering throughout their body, which we refer to as the epidermis. So do you think all plants will have the same structure and same type of epidermis layer? Well, actually not. Epidermis gets modified depending upon the habitat and thus the plant's need. Let me ask you a question. What would plants growing in the dry habitat need the most? Yes, water. In case of such plants, the epidermis forms a thicker layer in order to prevent excessive water loss. In fact, plants growing in desert have a thick, waxy chemical called cutin in their epidermal cells, which prevents water loss to the maximum extent. On the other hand, in terrestrial plants, usually the aerial parts have epidermal cells specialized in waxy secretions, and it helps in numerous ways, like preventing parasitic infection, protection against mechanical injuries, and even loss of excessive water during high temperatures. In addition to this, when we observe the roots of plants, we find tiny, numerous hair-like structures. These are also the modifications of the epidermal cells, which help in increasing the surface area of absorption. Talking about the structures, now since they are forming a protective layer, it is obvious that they do not possess intercellular spaces. Also, the cells are very flat in appearance and possess a comparatively thicker outer cell wall. Wait a second. Are you saying that the complete plant body has a layer of epidermis? Then how does the gaseous exchange along with the water vapor release occur? Well, the epidermis is clever enough to leave some spaces or precisely pores in its structures. Yes, the structures of pores, which we commonly refer to as stomata, are the spots where the epidermal cells form pits or openings and are guarded by the kidney-shaped guard cells. The guard cells guide and regulate the exchange of gases and also the water vapor from the stomata. Well, till now, we have been talking about the leaves and roots. Now let's talk about the stem. Do you think the stem will also possess the same type of epidermal layer as that in the leaves and roots? Actually, not. In fact, stems of huge trees do not even possess a proper epidermal layer. Yes, you heard me right. In plants which are much older, the epidermis is replaced by secondary meristem, which we usually refer to as a thick pore or simply the bark. Cells of these layers are dead and compactly arranged without intercellular spaces. Also, we find deposits of suberin which regulates gaseous exchange and water loss. Well, this video gave you a brief idea about epidermis. Now let's move ahead and describe complex permanent tissues in the next lesson.
So from the video, I hope you have got a brief idea about the epidermal tissue. Now let's discuss it in detail. So what did we find from the video? We found that the epidermis acts as the outer covering of the plant body. Forms the outer covering, right? Next is that they consist of flat compactly arranged cells, right? Next thing is that no intercellular space is the other thing. Thick cell wall, right? Another feature is that absent in stomata. Right. So these are the features of the epidermis that we have got to know from the video. So first thing is that it forms the outer covering of the plant body, just like the skin in case of human beings and animals. So when it is the outer covering, what do you think will be its main function? Yes, its main function will be protection, to protect the internal plant body. It consists of flat, compactly arranged cells. The cells will be compactly arranged and it will be very flat arrangement because it will form a continuous layer. Right? This is necessary to form a continuous layer. Right. Third thing is that no intercellular space. So if it would contain intercellular space, then obviously the protection function will not be met, because then the toxins and then the pathogens from the environment can enter through the intercellular space. So it forms compactly arranged layer which has got no intercellular space except in case of stomata, because that is necessary for the gaseous exchange. and also the cell wall is thick so that it can also perform this protection function better, and it can actually give the mechanical support to the plant body also, being the outer skin of the plant body. So these are the features we have known. Now we'll also discuss about the modifications which we have seen in the video. So epidermis can be modified into many ways according to the habitat and need of the plant. For example, root hairs starting from the ground level. What are root hairs? They are like the tiny outgrowths of the roots. What is their function? Their function is to increase the surface area for absorption of water and minerals from the surrounding soil. Then what is the next level? The stem. You have seen the stem gets converted into cork or bark, which is mostly composed of dead cells, right? And then what is its function? Again, protection and mechanical support only in case of the mature trees. Then in case of the plants growing in arid conditions such as the cactus, then the epidermis have got a thick layer of cutin, and that is known as cuticle, which is a waxy substance deposited so that transpiration or water loss can be prevented. Moreover, in plants dwelling in the aquatic environment, that is submerged underwater, they also contain a slimy layer of this epidermis so that they do not rot or decay when there is continuous exposure to water. So therefore, it contains a slimy layer that protects the aquatic submerged plants from getting decayed or rotten. Right. So in this way, the cuticle has modified itself according to the need as well as the requirement of the plant body according to its habitat also. Right. So therefore, this epidermis tissue is very much necessary for the survival of the plant in different habitats, be it in the arid condition or the aquatic condition or the terrestrial condition. Epidermis tissue is very vital. So we will see about the permanent tissues in our next lecture. So until then, I hope you have understood the topics that have been discussed today. Do let me know if you have any queries in the comments below, and we'll meet again in the next lecture. Till then, take care and stay tuned. Thank you. Bye bye.